Hello, everybody, and welcome into this Friday's live broadcast. It is the 28th of July, 2023. We're almost through July. Oh, thank goodness. It has been, every day has been no less than 110 degrees this month here in Phoenix. It's weird that I'm looking forward to August. Usually August is worse. It's been tough, but we'll get through it together. Today, I have a mini PC review, one that I've been very much looking forward to. It's the MinisForum, the HN2673. The unit they sent has 16 gigs of RAM and 512 storage, which seems to be pretty much standard on most mini PCs these days. It's fully upgradable, but this unit has a discrete graphics card, and that is something new. Talked about the add-in graphics cards on laptops and on some mini PCs that have what's called an MXM slot. And the MXM slot is a micro PCI Express, get what the last M stands for, but it's for essentially adding a graphics card. Sometimes you can even upgrade the graphics card, kind of depends on the system. This has an Intel-based graphics card, but not the one on the CPU. No. And while this may not be a leader in frames per second on gaming, it's absolutely something worth considering depending on the kind of gaming that you do. You could save quite a bit of money. So we're going to look into that today. You'll see the box is still shrink wrapped. I've not opened this. In fact, I only just received it in the mail Wednesday. So I've had it 2 days and I'm looking forward, very much looking forward to seeing if it lives up to the hype, because all of the specs sound very, very promising, including its ability to upgrade with two 2.5-inch drive slots inside of it, I'm told. So this should be ready to rock and roll. I think they offer a bare bones of this. In fact, you know what? Let's take a look at MinisForum's website. I do not see this unit available anywhere else but at MinisForum, as far as I can tell. You have to order it from them if you want it. I don't see it available at Amazon or other retailers. Whether or not that changes in the future, and it has to do with how new it is, I don't know. But I've got a link in the video notes, in the video description below this video, that's going to take you to this website right here, which I am going to share with you as soon as I find the right button to press. There it is. All right, the MinisForum HN2673. $649 is about $200 less than I thought this was going to cost. 16, and with this, it's 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs storage. Obviously, if you want to go 32 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage, you can pay an extra $60 there. Or you can go 64 gigs of RAM, just max the RAM out with 1 terabyte of storage, or just $1 under $800. There is no bare bones version of this available, unfortunately, but it's $649. I mean, come on. What are you getting for $649? Well, let's talk about it. The HN2673, the Core i7-12650H processor. That's Intel 7nm process. It has Windows 11 Pro already installed for you. It's got 4 air vents. It's got the Intel Arc A730M discrete graphics card added, so you're not using graphics on the CPU. The CPU itself has 6 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores and can reach a frequency of up to 4.7 gigahertz in speed. And of course, Intel's thread director is what associates and aligns your data being processed to the proper core, so that you're not wasting a performance core on a very low resource intensive process. And the thread director just handles all that automatically. It's nothing for you to do anything with. It's just back there doing its thing. And it's a very difficult thing to measure performance on, because what it's going to do is, based on how you're using your computer, it automatically optimizes the tasks that you are running uniquely, that is you, with the best and most efficient route through the CPU to get that task done quickly, efficiently, and without you having to make any decisions. In other words, it's not You're not assigning cores to tasks. It's doing this for you automatically. It's an incredible technology, and it takes it another step when we talk about measuring performance. We talk about cache, we talk about PCIe lanes, we talk about cores, but the thread director that identifies which tasks go to which cores is also a significant performance booster, which is very difficult to measure with synthetic benchmarks. DDR4 is the RAM, not DDR5. This is not a 13th gen. The PCIe is Gen 4. And will they say it's up to 2 terabytes? That's old and outdated. This limit not, I can confidently say without testing it, there is no 2 terabyte limit. The 2.5 inch, as I mentioned, they have 2 slots for adding 2.5 inch SATA based solid state or mechanical drives. And of course, the memory is dual channel. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get to 64 gigs. The only way you can get to 64 gigs is by buying the single largest memory module in this form factor twice. And the biggest memory module you can buy as of July 28th, 2023 on DDR4 is 32 gigs. So if the biggest you can buy is 32 gigs and you have 2 slots, it's not hard to do the math to know you cannot exceed 64 gigs of RAM unless you add more slots or you somehow find a way to add density to the RAM modules. A little more about the CPU here. We've already talked about the single core performance versus the previous gen, multi-core performance versus previous gen. I've mentioned before, when comparing similar processors, one generation to the other, it's about an average of 10% difference. And if you take the average of 8% and 13%, it's going to get you right around, 10%. This is all about the Intel Arc A730M, built on the Xe-HPG microarchitecture. It supports ray tracing. I like how this says XMX. I think it's MXM. I think somebody's dyslexic. AI hardware accelerator. I don't know. Maybe that's something different. Are you telling me the XMX is on the MXM processor? I think, or the connector, I think that's supposed to be MXM. AI hardware acceleration technology and the advanced Xe media engine providing support for gaming and creative work. Yeah, that means video editing, photo editing, creative work. They've got a couple of 3D Mark results for Time Spy and Firestrike, which you've seen me run here in the past. Let's see, compared to software programming, Intel Arc graphics can encode 4.4 times faster, 50% more efficient than H.264. All right. XESS super sampling using, well, we're back to XMX again, so maybe that's not a typo. XMX AI hardware acceleration technology, AI enhanced output can increase resolution while maintaining high quality output so everyone can enjoy a powerful gaming experience. Looks like 77 frames per second in Hades, and with XESS on, 112 frames per second in the same game. Why there's only one game and it's one I've never heard of, I don't know. DaVinci Resolve Studio export time comparison. The Intel Core CPU with integrated graphics versus the Intel Arc Max A730 GPU is 1.88 times faster using the Intel Arc. Interesting. The cooling system, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 fans across the back here. Yeah, I'm going to say that's probably going to stay nice and breezy. Fully hollowed out design with unobstructed airflow. Down pressure heatsink, small and quiet. So that's clearly, I definitely think who's ever doing their web design should be checked for dyslexia. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I'm sincere. I think there's a serious undiagnosed medical issue that should be treated here. Small and quiet, that the E at the end needs to go before the T. Efficient and quiet performance release, 45 watt CPU, 95 watt GPU, a max 34 dB noise decibel level. The chassis can be set horizontally or vertically. Obviously, we want to keep it vertical because I think it looks way better. And here's an exploded design of the internal components, kind of vaguely without detail here. We've got the solid state drive connectors or SATA SSD or SATA hard. Let's just say SATA connectors, because whether or not it's solid state or mechanical is up to you. And our RAM, solid state drive, our M.2. It supports 4 monitors at 4K at the same time. And it does that using 2 USB-C ports and 2 HDMI ports. So you would use a USB-C to an HDMI adapter or cable that you can buy places like Amazon sell. So yeah, 4K at 60 across all 4 video outputs. Look at all the plugs. We've got a 2.5 gig Ethernet. There's our USB Type-C that supports DisplayPort and data, followed by our HDMI, and then duplicated again here with 2 USB 3.2 Type-A's, 2 USB 2.0 Type-A's, and a 19-volt input barrel jack connector for power. Up here at the very top, we've got a recessed button that's for clearing the CMOS. We've got a single 3.2 Type-A connector. We've got a headphone jack and a microphone jack that are separated out. We've got a 3.2 Type-C data jack that will not support video output. And then, of course, our power button is at the very bottom. And you can see it's such a brand new product. There are no reviews on it yet. Okay, I need a knife. So this is all live, unscripted, and unrehearsed. And as you can see, this package has shrink wrap. There is no, as I mentioned, there's no script. So I never quite know how things are going to go, but usually it's pretty rare that we ever have a dead on arrival product or something is damaged in shipping. It can happen, but it's very, very rare. Some people have a concern about that. And I can tell you it's possible, but unlikely. You can see we have a little bit of wrinkling here on the box from the shipping, but this did come to us all the way from, I think, Hong Kong. So it's quite a distance from Hong Kong to Phoenix. And when you receive it, you unbox it, it's going to be packaged like this. I'll reach in here and just pull this out. I see 4 fans.
Oh.
Like the bottom, front, the top. Ooh, it's got a little weight to it. It must weigh about 4 or 5 pounds. And underneath here, you put the camera down in there, we've got our power brick, a big one at that. This is a 19-volt power brick. Always take this protective plastic off. It keeps the unit from getting scratched in shipping, but when you start using the unit, it can cause it to run hotter than it should be running, which is not good. If you want to have a premature failure, wrap something around this while it's on to keep the air from cooling it, and you'll have this fail sooner than later. So take that plastic off. It's just there to protect it in shipping. I really like that they're using a full-size PC power cable because those are fairly ubiquitous, fairly common. We've got an HDMI cable. We've got our power cable. We have our base. All your base belong to us. And we have slot covers for something I don't know what yet. Maybe something inside. So what I'm going to do, I'll put those back in there, put that back down in there, and we'll throw all that back in there. We'll get this out of the way so you can have some space to work. Oh, got some screws, which I think are needed for the base, and I think we should put the base on it. Yeah, you agreeing?
Mm-hmm. I do. Pretty neat.
So we have more plastic. If you leave this on, it's going to make it very slippery on your desk or surface. You need to remove it. It's got a little bit of friction. So when you place it on the desk, it won't easily slide around. Something like this on the bottom of a mouse is good because it helps it slide, but you wouldn't want that on a stand. Okay. That over there.
Is that the satisfaction of the peel?
The peel. And I got to put on my glasses so I can see. Let's see. I've learned the hard way. This only goes on one way. Oh, there's little nubs. You see that? See those little nubs? They push down. That's for. Oh, just seats right down over those. Oh, I guess it just helps guide you to. All right, I'm going to open this bag of screws here, which I'm assuming. Why do we have 6 of them? We only need 4. They've given us 6. I'm always confused if I get more screws than I need, because I don't know if I'm missing something or if they're just there as spares. Accustomed to not having spares. I'll get that one started. I'll get this one started. Don't tighten them down yet till we get them all started. That one started. And for some reason, 2 of these, oh no, they all have some Loctite on them. It's just unhappy. Screw thread. Very strange. Now with them all started, I can go ahead and tighten them down. Do not over tighten these. You just want to snug them down to keep the foot from sliding off. Phillips number 2 is going to be your best bet for these types of screws. And I'll put these other screws over here. Don't let me forget them. Now, as to the unit itself, how it opens. Was there no documentation in this? I don't think there was. Now that I'm thinking about it. You know, I'm starting to wonder if maybe to open this up, we have to take the base off of it. I'm wondering if that's what those little push down dealies are, or detents for the side panels. Maybe that's just something we pop out, because I don't. No. I want to open it up real quick. I want to see the inside of it. But I should be able to simply loosen these screws. I shouldn't have to take them all the way out. And then slide the foot forward. See, I'm thinking, oh, there are screws. Okay. Okay, so on this side, oh, you know what? I take all the screws out. Because I want to see what they're hiding. So then I guess you push this detent down. Screws on the other side? No? Do I lift up on it? Yeah, lift up on it. There it is. There are a lot of fans. I told you I had a lot of fans. You didn't believe me. See some kind of a heat sink here. See an antenna wire there. We'll come over to the other side, and I guess you lift it up. I'm not quite sure what these detents are for. Puzzling. They don't seem to be attached to anything. This up and pull it away. Don't pry it away like I did. Here's the inside.
Do as I say, not as I do.
So look, we've got our 2.5-inch SATA connector right here, and we've got another one. That's unusual to see 2 of them. And you see these little hooks? Those are designed so that you, instead of placing screws into the sides of your 2.5-inch drive, you're going to slide your 2.5-inch drive in over these hooks, and then this middle bar is going to hold it down in place. It looks like there's additional screws here if you wanted to go at it that way, but I don't think you need to secure it that much unless you're moving it around a ton. There's our CMOS battery. And then as far as these fans go, it's going to be very difficult to get up under there. Here's something my OCD is catching. There's no screw in the corner here. There's no screw in the corner here. There's no screw in the corner here, but there is a screw in the corner over here. It really bothers my OCD. Look at the size of the heatsink behind there. Holy cow. So our M.2 drive is down there. I think the easiest way to work on this, if we were going to, would likely be to take these 4 screws out and pull the board out this way and put it back in. I think that'd be easier, less effort than taking all the fans out, but we're not doing any of that. You know, there's a GPU in there, and that's probably why some of this cooling is so aggressive, is they've got to cool both the CPU and the GPU. And with a socket. Anyway, I'll just kind of hold this at some angles. You guys can kind of get an idea of seeing what I'm seeing. If you want a full breakdown of this, there's another YouTube channel called ETA Prime that did a review on this yesterday. I probably should have watched that, so I'd be better prepared for today. But I did skip through it, and I think he takes this and breaks it down entirely, in case you're curious. Because it's brand new and it's ready to go out of the box, I don't want to potentially break it. And because if it doesn't work for any reason, I won't know if I broke it or if it was sent to me broken. Not that I've ever had a broken machine sent from MinisForum, but I don't want to start today. So without causing any other potential harm, like I said, I'm just browsing. I'm going to put the covers back on. That should go on really easy. I imagine, I don't know if the sides are interchangeable or not. Let's see. Does not want to sit down. Let's try it from this side. I would lay it flat, align it, and then it should slide down. Very easily. See how that sat right down there? We'll do the same thing with this side. Like this. It's got a track it slides in. So you've got to find it. And then you've got to kind of hold it down into the track because it wants to pop out of there. And you'll know when it's in the track because it will sit flush. And I'm clearly not doing this right. I'm missing something. There it goes. And then, well, I press down on it, slide it forward. If you reach any resistance sliding this forward, it's because it's not in the track. When it's in the track, it will slide down like butter. It'll be smooth. Just like that. Do not use brute force on these mini PCs, whatever you do. And then we'll put these screws back in. These screws are a different length and width from the ones that hold the foot on, so don't get them mixed up. As you can see, these are the ones that hold the feet on, and these are the ones that hold the panel on. They're very different. And do not over tighten these screws onto the side panels because they're just plastic. We're not sealing this against, waterproofing. So once it feels snug, you don't need to take it any further. And if you feel as though you might have taken it too far, just back it off a quarter turn. It's not going to go anywhere. So easy to get into. As to whether or not how easy it is to upgrade the storage and the RAM, a little more complicated than just pulling the panel off, but not rocket science either way. Now, did this go on this way? I think so. I think I got it right the first time. If I flip this around 180 degrees, it will not align properly. Learned that lesson the hard way with another model that uses the same case from MinisForum. Okay, easy peasy. And as you can see from the front, we've got our branding, which is subtle. It's not in your face. I appreciate that. A lack of RGB is always welcome here on these parts where we're professionals and not people. Hey, professionals. Are you constipated? Sound like you might need a little bit of fiber.
No bad mouth RGB.
All right. Let me have you step back because you're standing on all of my organized cables.
Organize it on the floor.
You have your system and I have mine, okay?
Yeah. Throw it on the floor.
They're organized piles.
Organized piles.
Mm-hmm. That's the way we do it here.
That's right.
All right, we're going to go HDMI. Doesn't matter which HDMI port. We'll just pick that one because our standard PC power cable, I don't need to use the one that came in the box because, quite frankly, it's a standard power cable. And if you do a close-up on the specifications on the power adapter here so the folks at home can see, should be auto switching at 240 or 110 volts. It is. 3.0 amps maximum. The output is 19 volts at 12.6 amps, 239 watts. Yes, this will pull some pretty significant wattage from the wall if you're going to be gaming on it and really, pulling power through that GPU and CPU to get your super high frames per second. Under normal usage, though, you're probably going to be using less than 100 watts. So it just kind of depends on how you're using it. Sort of like a V8 engine in a car. Just because you have a V8 engine doesn't mean you're revving the engine all the time and doing 120 miles an hour every time you're behind the wheel. At least I hope not anyway. I'll grab a keyboard and a mouse.
I should install my games on it.
Yeah, you absolutely could. And see how it does on Steam. We'll only need about 3 days to download all the games.
Put WoW on it.
Yeah, that's a big test of frames per second. World of Warcraft will play on old computers without a problem. It's not exactly a...
How about Rift?
Yeah, I don't know anything about those games because, I'm over 14. All right, so right down here is our power button. You want to press it? Okay, and then I'm going to go over to our HDMI input, and you can take a break. And we're... Oh, wow, look at that. Why is that so... What happened?
Huge.
Let me hit Control F. No, that's really bizarre how that's synchronized. It's purple. Is it purple on purpose, or do I have a loose cable? That should be white. Yeah, a loose cable. That was me, folks. That was me. I sometimes don't push my cables in far enough. It's a problem, and I am seeing a doctor for it. Oystein says it's back to CGA. Do you remember, Carey? Yeah, thanks for reminding me. 16 colors, baby. All right, here we go with our Windows 11 startup. You'll see I did not plug the internet into this because I don't want to be forced into creating an online Microsoft account. All right, so we're going to go English, yes. United States, yes. Keyboard layout, US, yes. Secondary language keyboard layout, no. Wi-Fi, I do not have internet. Oh, it's so nice to see that option. Thank you, MinisForum, for configuring Windows 11 in your installs without us having to bypass NRO. So we go right to the license agreement. We can create our local account. We'll just put the word user, U-S-E-R, enter, enter. I like to leave location settings on. And why is that, everybody? I'm starting to understand why singers that sing really popular songs will let the audience oftentimes sing the chorus because they're so sick of repeating themselves. Everything else we turn off. And that's just a preference. You can change that if you were to receive a computer from me and I've set those settings, they're reversible. You can change them. Not that using Shift F10 and typing in OOBE/bypass NRO is that much effort. It's just nice that we didn't have to do it. The epitome of laziness is I didn't have to push a few buttons. So I appreciate that. Yes, people are saying I leave location settings on so I can order pizza near me. Find Pizza Hut near me. If you don't have location settings on, it says, oh, I don't know where you are. Also, I like the date and time to always be adjusted automatically without me thinking about it. We all know every watch and every clock, whether it's on a computer or hanging on the wall, loses minutes over time or gains minutes over time. Computers are no different. So it'll synchronize with the time server and automatically adjust that, including any daylight saving time adjustments, all automatically. So it's a great feature to have. And Big Brother to watch me. That's right. As you can tell, as a YouTube content creator, I'm very much an exposition. What is the word? Exhibitionist. So I want the government to watch me so I can put on a show for them. I very much enjoy that. And I just appreciate that, that they care enough. So if they want to watch me, my theory is let's give them something to watch. I'll show you something. All right, now I'm going to plug my internet cable into this computer since we bypassed the NRO. And we'll get an IP address and we'll hit Windows Update. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the IP address to be assigned here, I can go over to the device manager and see how things are looking in here. Device manager says we have all of our devices and drivers installed correctly, no complaints. Right click again on the start menu. We'll go to System. And System tells us we have a 12th gen Core i7-12650H. Currently running at 2.3 gigahertz, but it will crank up as needed. 16 gigs of RAM, if I'm honest, feels a little light for this particular configuration. On an i5 or less, it's more typical. I think anybody buying this machine would be in your best interest to bump that to 32. I don't know that 64 would add any more for you, but certainly if you're going to game with it, I would absolutely be sure this is at 32. There's our Windows 11 Pro. It is 22H2, thank goodness. And it looks like we've received our IP address, so I will go to Settings and hit Windows Update, download and install. David Herzog says, hello, Carey, Camera Girl, and chat. Welcome in, David. Weinstein says, well done, MinisForum. Agreed. Stan Aristov said, what RAM is it? Boy, oh boy, Stan, for 20 minutes, we did nothing but talk about all of the internals. All you have to do is hit that little scroll line that's at the bottom of your video. These videos, you can rewind them as though it's a recorded video. It's called DVR mode, and it allows you to go back and see all of the details that you missed, so we don't have to repeat ourselves. It's a very courteous and thoughtful thing to do. And I'm going to turn on this option so we can grab updates automatically in the background. I also want to check advanced options. I want to make sure I receive products for other Microsoft updates for other Microsoft products like Office if I decide to install that. And let's see, notify me when a restart is required. Those are the settings I've been changing on my clients' machines because they've been ignoring the restart and they leave their computers on as I instruct them to, my business clients. But I didn't mean for them to not restart them, ever. So they've been sitting waiting for a restart for over 2 weeks, and they emailed me the other day and said, computer's acting sluggish. And I said, gee, that's unusual since I just upgraded its RAM from 16 gigs to 64 gigs and upgraded the slow NVMe to an ultra-fast NVMe. The last thing I expect you to say is it's sluggish. Well, lo and behold, they haven't rebooted it in 2 weeks, and it's sitting there, and the system tray has the icon of the... Hey, where'd my internet connection go? Wait a minute. I'm just not plugging cables in good today, apparently. But yes, my customers are not restarting their computers once a week as I advised them to do. So I've started to set this up to set the options from the default so that they can automatically restart during inactive hours. And you can set your active hours in the advanced options settings so it knows not to restart during, say, 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Anytime after that or before that, it can restart. And then I shouldn't have those support calls anymore. And the customers, I don't have to worry about telling the customers, you know, hey, you need to do this. They've been a customer of mine for over a decade. And if they don't know by now, I'm certainly told them more than once. Some people just aren't going to do it. And so it's easier to just automate things than to try and get people to exert the effort. I don't know why. You wouldn't think that's a big deal. I guess they have other things on their mind. I want to set my tablet here to 1080. Do be sure you click on that little gear or cog icon on the YouTube video and make sure you're watching this video in 1080 if you can, because otherwise the video is not as clear or as crisp. And you may not realize or know what resolution you're watching the video in without double checking. Sarge Tech said mini PCs are becoming a trend and it makes sense. Well, they're cheaper. Let's say you want to put together a machine equivalent to this, but a desktop. The case alone, you're likely going to spend $100 to $150. Your power supply is likely going to be another $100 to $130. So you're already at a third of the cost of this and you haven't got a CPU, a cooler, a motherboard, RAM, storage, or an operating system yet. So it's easy to see that the machines are less expensive, much more portable, take up less room, make less noise, use less power. They're cheaper to run on the electricity cost. For me as a technician, it's cheaper and easier for me to ship these. There's really nothing to break. I don't worry about hanging a 15-pound graphics card off the side of it to sag and break in time or in shipping, or a large, Noctua DH15 heatsink that's likely going to bend in half as they typically do in shipping. It's expensive, to use those Noctua coolers. They block any aesthetic that you might have put in the PC. Liquid cooling, you got to deal with the pumps wearing out and the liquid clogging up, internally, building up bacteria, evaporating over time. It's a constant maintenance issue that will not go away as long as you insist on using liquid cooling. This, you've got 4 fans that are easily replaceable. They're standard fans, not difficult to find those. If and when the time comes, you need to replace one. And it's all vented across every side panel except the front. So top, bottom, sides, and rear are all vented. So running it with the can of that air compressor that I use, that battery-operated lithium-ion USB rechargeable air duster, will blow this out super easy without having to ever open it. Okay, so while that's updating, let me go back to camera 1 and I'll put it in the corner so that you guys can see me again. I just need to grab this corner and move it up here. There we go. And so while we're waiting, let me just take a look in the chat room. Rob Foster said, Carey, I am building a new PC. I installed Windows 11, and on your recommendation, I bought a key for Windows 10. It activated my install with no issues. I also got a couple of keys for Office 2016, also with no problems. Yeah, what's great about Office 2016 is that you don't have to create a Microsoft account to activate it. There are benefits to creating the Microsoft account and activating it so that it stays tied to your account. Office 2016, Office 2019, Both end of life support is the same as Windows 10, October 14th of 2025. Then there's Office 2021, which only gives you 1 more year of support, and its end of life is almost exactly 1 year later. So what does that leave you with regards to support in Office? Well, pretty much Office 365 and a subscription. So I suggest if you want a perpetual license, Office 2016 is the only one sold right now that you can activate that's supported by Microsoft. And it's also the cheapest at like $27. So it's a heck of a deal. I'm sure I'm going to hear from people a year from now. They're going to be like, oh, I wish I would have bought it when it stops becoming available. Burton wants to know the difference between Windows Home Pro, the difference between Windows Home and Windows Pro. Windows Pro is for professionals in an office environment using logging into servers, for example, having encryption like BitLocker. There's nothing a home user should require from Pro. Any home user upgrading, paying the money and investing the time to upgrade Windows, any Windows version of Home, Windows 7 Home, Windows 8 Home, Windows 10 Home, Windows 11 Home, upgrading that to Pro is a complete waste of time and money unless you have a specific need of using BitLocker or you want to enable remote connections. But you can do all this with third-party software. So if you have to ask the question, what's the difference? It's a waste of money for you to have it. I do have a video specifically on this. If you look in my video library of over 1,500 videos that I've been making since 2008 here on YouTube, most frequently asked questions have already been addressed, and the information is as true today as when I made the video. So save your money. And if you have Windows 10 Home, and you don't need to log into a server, and you don't need to use BitLocker encryption, you don't need to waste your time and your money. It doesn't do anything for your PC in regards to performance or security. It won't work any better. Some people think, oh, it'll work better with Pro. It'll open the gates up, but no, it doesn't. It absolutely does not. But if you want to spend your money on it, I mean, go ahead. Just when it's all said and done, your computer's going to run exactly the same, and the way you use the computer will be exactly the same. The only difference is you'll be out the money and you'll be out the time. Oystein answers that question as well here in the chat. He says BitLocker encryption, remote desktop support, group policy management, a few other advanced security and business tools. That's why it's for professionals. And it costs more. When I sell computers, I'll always recommend Windows Pro on there because the cost difference, if you look at VIP CDK deals, it's a $3 price difference. And I would rather sell the computer with Windows Professional than Windows Home because sometimes the users end up needing Pro. Most of the time they don't, but it doesn't hurt them to have it. And for that $3 price difference, it also reduces my inventory to reducing the variety of products I have to stock. Feral Terminator said, I had an interesting conversation today at one of the shops I support. They bought a Wi-Fi blocker. It's a metal box to stick to their router to block Wi-Fi radiation. Yeah, human beings can be very strange creatures. We're bombarded with radio signals from AM and FM radio, transmissions from emergency services. You know, pilots piloting aircraft have to have radio signals. We have radio signals to the space station and going out to outer space. And of course, probably the worst case of radiation that we're getting is from our own sun. So if you step outside while the sun is out, you're getting an extreme dose of radiation, which is far greater than anything your router can do. Beyond that, the router usually has a button to turn off the Wi-Fi. If you're not using it, it's a security concern to have Wi-Fi available. So why have that security concern if you're not using the Wi-Fi? So you just go in and disable the radio on the router. It's just a little checkbox. Cost you nothing. But This is knowledge versus what you don't know. So a lot of people who don't know what they don't know, which is all of us, by the way, we all don't know what we don't know, will end up spending money and spending time on things that we don't understand completely, that are a complete and utter waste of time. And, in the big picture of things, most of us don't learn from it. So when they put this metal box over their router, because they don't want Wi-Fi, because they didn't know they just had to click a button, they will be satisfied that they've done something good and pat themselves on the back, and encourages that behavior of reacting to ignorance without proper research and spending money that doesn't need to be spent for unnecessary items that actually don't help in the sense of any health concern of radiation, in the sense that there's so many ways that we can die. Who's to say that the person who bought that to block the radiation for health reasons doesn't get hit by a car, get food poisoning, get cancer? I mean, you got to die of something. Won't you feel silly if you die of nothing? But the fear of death, I guess, is the main motivator. And if that somehow had any correlation to living longer, I'd be first in line to buy one. But there's a lot of things out there trying to kill you, mostly other humans. Can I buy one of those to put around some people I don't like? Do they make those about 5'10"? That would be really good for my physical and mental health if I could buy that. Heck, I might wear one myself. Hey, sucker born every day. These people that sell this stuff, anything to make a buck. They still sell those little cigarette lighter plug-ins for your car that are supposed to increase gas mileage. They had that, forget what it was called, but it was a thing that went on the air intake of your car that would cause the air to cycle, to rotate around. They said that would improve gas mileage, when in fact all it did was screw up the engine computer and really wreak havoc with an engine. So, what are you going to do? And they were sold, these devices, the Tornado or something it was called. They were sold at auto parts stores around the nation. So you think that's a legit product if it's being sold at auto parts. It's all about taking your money. That's all they care about. Speaking of taking your money, Fatal Dragons just voluntarily surrendered $5 in Super Chat. Thank you, Fatal Dragons. He says, hello, chat. Howdy, Carey. My song of the week is Long as I Can See the Light by CCR. Right on. Mick Jagger just turned 80 years old. Can you believe that? He's going to be singing Start Me Up as they're charging up the defibrillator. I want to change the power settings on this because it keeps going to sleep on me. So I'm going to go over here to full screen this on my side of things. Oops. Full screen for Carey. And then we'll go down here. Oh, look, I got the search highlights. Let's turn that off. Search permissions. Search space PE. There it is. Right up here, suggested. That's what I want. I don't have to type the whole thing in. Turn off content suggestions. So when I click this off, watch this down here. Bye-bye. And while we're in here, we'll type in power. We want to look for power plan, power, sleep, and battery settings. Power mode. This isn't the screen. Let's type in edit power plan. There it is. Click on that. That's what I wanted. I'll tell it to turn off the display after 3 hours. And I do not want the computer to go to sleep. Sleep is for saving batteries. If you have a tablet, a laptop, you definitely want to enable sleep mode if you've walked away from it. You don't want the batteries to drain out because you forgot that you walked away from it. When it's plugged in, the only thing really taking up a lot of power on a desktop is your screen. So to prevent burn-in on your screen and to save a little money on your electric bill, I have it turn off the screen only. Now, these screens are much more power efficient than the old CRTs of yesteryear. However, the money that you're saving, well, it may not be as much as putting to sleep a CRT. As I mentioned, it does prevent burn-in. So, but sleep mode, a lot of people have trouble waking from sleep mode properly. It's a constant support aggravation because there's really no answer to it. Sometimes video drivers impede the effectiveness of sleep mode from working correctly. And if the manufacturer of the drivers isn't updating the drivers, there's nothing you can do about it but disable sleep mode. So just don't enable it to begin with. Now, if you're using sleep mode on a computer you plug in and you're not having any problems with it, well, I'm not suggesting you change it, but I would not go down that road and experiment with it unless you're ready to experience problems with the computer waking up. Unless, of course, we're saving batteries. Otherwise, it's not worth the hassle, in my opinion. LRCX wants to know, why do the cumulative updates always say preview? Well, they don't always. So the cumulative updates are the updates that are all combined into one. And when they say preview, those are the cumulative updates for next month. And you can go ahead and get a preview of them, install them now. So you don't have to, they're optional. I always grab all updates regardless. That's just what my OCD demands of me. And I've never had any negative consequences from doing so. Keep the computers updated rather than having them remain vulnerable to an exploit. Microsoft releases updates every month, so it makes sense that every month there's a new preview cumulative update, or every other month, depending on how often they combine them, converge them. Ron Barnes says he's going to be 81 years old in October. Well, you're a year ahead of my father. He will turn 80 the first week of November. Look at you go. And right on top of the technology. There's a lot of people in your generation that say that technology stuff, that's just beyond me. And, it's really an attitude problem. It's not an age problem. So I'm always delighted to see people who are at least 10 years or more older than me that are embracing the technology. And I've met quite a few who have embraced it far beyond as much as I have. I had a gentleman, when I went over to his house, he's still using an Amiga ST, and he had all of these different drives for converting things and cables strewn about everywhere. And I said, you need to let me come over someday and clean all this cabling out. It took me a while to kind of figure out how to configure everything for him, because he was such a demanding and high-end user. He had a configuration more complex than my own, and very much admired him. He was a very nice and very smart man. Joseph Hawkins says, still young at 74 years of age. Hey, agreed. Zach Bischoff said he's turning 20 in September. Bull142 says 65 in December. Cliff Reel says he's 85 and still learning. Dick Poverman says, my mother is 90 years old and loves tech. She got a smartphone before I did. Hey, that's awesome. Eileen Novak said, I am a spry 62. Sherry McFarland said, I agree, I'm 65 and very much into tech for many years. Peter Lycock said he's going to be 72 in August. See that? He's just a kid. Jim KJ3N says, 20 years old. Get off my lawn, kid. Sarge Tech said, yes, some of us boomers are good with technology and help others who do not want to understand it. Yeah, I'm glad that you can relieve me of some of that burden. Thank you for that. Speaking of burden, Matthew Burden's turning 40 in November. Hey, the big 4-0. Davis Parsons says he's 74. Patrick Manny says he's 78. Paul Howe says he's 63. William Lynn said he's 19 and he can't learn in college. Hate that, but have to stay. Elijah Dickens says 71 and still got it. Andy Kane says he's 43. Leslie Cavan says 55 and still learning. Dave Hall said 76 in 2 days and still learning after 50 years in electronics. Happy early birthday. Everybody say happy birthday to Dave Hall. George Ferrugia says he's going to be 78 in March. Do we have more people in their 70s in my chat room than any other age group? That's fascinating. Sam Lazar says 23 next June. That's a long way to go. William Gale, 59 this Sunday, last of the 50s. Happy early birthday to you as well. Attitude is everything. Douglas Burchell said, I'll be 52 in December and still learning. Ah, you're just a kid. Sarge Tech said he's 64. Dustin Fuller says he's 65. Alan Linda says he's 70. You can't be 70. I've met Alan. I think he's fibbing. Thomas Backenstow says 61. Gary Tatum says he'll be 59. Sue Cool Lawrence says 67 last month. 3D Everything said he turned 68 this month. William Lynn said younger people have to work, no time for YouTube. Oh, you must know different younger people than me. Gary Randall said he's going to be 54 next Friday. Wow, a lot of August birthdays coming up here. Blackjack Yak says 33 here, not many in their 30s here. Mr. Ed says he's going to be 72 in 2 weeks. Gil Garcia says he's 53. Jim KJ3N says, as of yesterday, I've completed my 63rd trip around the sun. Well, happy belated birthday to Jim KJ3N. LRCX said he's 68. Trips Bunch says 94 in 3 weeks. Get out of here. That can't be real. Is that real? Charles Eslick says he'll be 70 this February. Blackwatch 72 in October. Alan Shaver at 68. Shamim Kashviras 39. Austin Grace says he's going to be 36 in January. So we have one teenager. Is it just William Lynn is the only teenager watching? You know, I just turned 40 15 years ago. Kevin thinks those detents are in place to align the foot at the bottom to lock it in place, and then the screws secure it into place. I think you're right. I do think that's what they're for. Zach Bischoff said, I'm still technically in my teens at 19. Well, there's nothing technical about it. It's you are or you aren't in your teens. Alan says, happy 40th for the 15th time, Carey. Mark Gaines says he's going to be 55 this Tuesday. Right on. You're catching up to me, Mark. Blackwatch said I celebrated my 22nd birthday 50 years ago. Blackjack says we should do a poll. You know, the YouTube analytics on my YouTube creator page does show me what you guys have set your age to be when you've created your YouTube account. I just don't know how truthful that information is, right? It determines, it asks you if you're male or female or, you know, a pumpkin. It asks you, I think there's a race, an ethnicity question, and they're optional. You don't have to answer them. And then, of course, age. And as long as you're over the age of 13, that's all they're really much requiring age for. Lee Goldstein said, 70 and hate being old. What don't you like about the evolution that you've experienced? I think that age is a great thing. All I have to do is watch the news, and every day there's somebody that hasn't made it as far as I have. Not to mention, some people I know, unfortunately, have already, this one reason or another, aren't here anymore. So I think it's kind of a mixed blessing to continue to appreciate the limited time we have here and look forward to tomorrow instead of just thinking about the old days. I know that the 80s, the 1980s for me were a terrible time. Very, very, very difficult time. And, very much trying to survive, literally. Bullies wanting to beat me up. And if a bully wants to beat you up, if you've ever been bullied, how do you know when they're going to stop? So it's as though somebody's threatening to murder you. And if you don't have enough strength to fight back, as I didn't at that time, I ran. And I ran so fast they couldn't catch me. And no adults would help me. So it was pretty much fight or flight, live or die. I don't want to go back to living like that ever again. That lack of self-confidence, the lack of being able to stand up for myself, the dependence on others to come and rescue me, and since nobody ever did, literally nobody ever did, I ran. I would not want to go back to that. Not enough money in the world. I'm glad to have it behind me. And I'm glad that I survived it, because otherwise I wouldn't be here doing this now. Sorry, getting a little philosophical. The computer is almost ready to reboot. I'm going to grab a colder Gatorade while we're waiting. Gamma Girl's 29. Well, on the planet that she's from, she's 29. Bob R. said, I'm on the right side of the grass. I reached out to our friend John Jack Wilson because I haven't seen him in the chat room in a while. And he's had a couple of incidents where he's fallen and, had to go to the hospital. And I'm just hope that something like that didn't happen again and making sure he's okay. So I reached out in an email and said, hey, just checking up on you. And well, he's been busy running around, and his kids are keeping him busy. They have their own struggles. And I said, hey, keeping busy is good. But he said, yeah, I'm still on this side of the grass. Yeah. So when you're checking in on somebody, it's like poking them with a stick. Hey, are you dead? Is everything okay? As long as everything's okay, I can rest easy. I was getting worried. I hadn't seen you or heard from you in a while. I just wanted to make sure you weren't in a hospital somewhere or worse. Ben Laird with a £5 contribution joins us from Scotland and says, here is my late fee. Thank you, Ben. Sarge Tech says, well, the computer's updating. We are rebooting our lives and grateful for every day we're still above ground. Can I get an amen? There you go. Bull142 says, still picking daisies, not pushing them up. That's the attitude. Frank Jimmy says, whatever happened with Catherine Anna Hauserman? I don't know. So most people don't check in with me. I think Catherine lives in Colombia, so it's not exactly like we're neighbors. I don't know. I think I've seen her on Doug Bett's live channel during his live session not too long ago. Okay, we ready for a restart? I think we are. Let's go ahead and, oopsie, start now. Let those updates take place. Lost Kitty Cat's email address. Chris Garrett confirms Catherine was on Doug's live chat a few weeks ago. I thought I saw her in there. But you can probably reach out to her on Facebook, as far as I know. She still has a Facebook page that I assume she's checking regularly, and you can message her there. Gil Garcia says, what happened to Maddie? I have no idea who you're talking about. I don't know anybody named Maddie. LRCX said Catherine was in our chat room a couple of weeks ago. Oh, Madi. Monty still maintains membership here to the channel. He still supports the channel. I think life's been keeping him busy. I talked to him about 6 weeks ago. Just had a lot of stuff going on. But he was another one I checked in with because I hadn't heard from him in a while. And everything's good. So as long as everything's good and he's just busy, hey, that's good news. It's a good excuse to not be in the chat room because you're living life. It's great. Powell House says Catherine has a YouTube channel. She does? That's news to me. Thomas Backenstow says, where is Mitch? I have no idea. He doesn't check in with me, and I don't ask. But last we spoke, he was taking his motorcycle out on a ride out in the early morning before the sun got too hot. I think we've had 26 days in a row of 110 degrees Fahrenheit or above. It looks like we're going to go through the entirety of July with no temperature below 110. We did get a monsoon storm in last night, very large winds and rain. We didn't get much rain here. We got a lot of wind. Ripped the roofs. What's that? Oh, the night before last night. And that brought the temperatures down into the 70s, but it was really humid. It was like Florida. Really, really, air was thick with humidity. But it did drop those temperatures, and it was the first time we had a night below 90. It usually doesn't get below 90 at night. It hasn't been this month, so that significantly brought the temps down. And we might have some more storms coming, and I hope we do, because that is a great relief from the heat. Alan Linda says, Mitch is in Scottsdale. How do you know he's in Scottsdale? Avery says, Carey, check your email. Ron Barnish says, Mitch is on the actors picket line. Yeah, I don't think Mitch is going to go out in this heat. I don't think so. All right, we'll check the email. Oh, it looks like I missed a couple of things here. Hey, camera girl. Amazon says they delivered that camera. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I ordered a mouse for a customer and had it delivered to their address, so it must be the mouse. Nick Caffrey sends $10.53 via PayPal. Holy cow, we have an extremely generous gift card from Rob Foster. Does that say what I think it says?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I don't even know what to say.
How about thank you?
Well, thank you doesn't seem to be adequate. Holy cow. Several $100s from Rob Foster. What an incredibly generous gift. So what I'm saving up for right now, I think I've got about $800 in Amazon gift cards right now. And I am considering yet one more camera, the updated Panasonic. However, I'm on the fence depending on how the Sony works out. Because if the Sony doesn't work out, I'm going to send the Sony in and exchange it for the Panasonic. But in the meantime, I'm a long way away from the $2,300 the Panasonic costs. And so what I'm trying to do is just kind of hoard those gift cards up until I have enough to, immediately select that optional camera as a secondary camera or potentially as a main camera. This camera here, it needs to be retired. It's had a good long life. I've been using it since Studio A, and I don't like how it flattens everything. Everything looks bigger than it really is. Even these mini PCs, people are shocked to see how small mini PCs really are compared to how this camera makes them look. People are often shocked at how skinny I am compared to how fat I look on camera. Not that I'm as skinny as I used to be, but I'm definitely not Not that big. Do you see the email from Synology? Have you addressed it? Okay, thank you. I'm letting Camera Girl handle some of the talk with companies that want us to feature their product. We're in talks right now with Synology, and I hope to get their latest home NAS in for review. And it'll be the first time I get to work with Synology where I'm not going out and buying the product. Lotto Win with a $50 super chat says, "Happy Friday, Carey. Thank you for your continued mentorship. Would it be all right to ask your opinion on which mini PC with an Intel CPU that you've reviewed might have the fastest frames per second for AA gaming?" I know AAA. Hold that thought for a second. The reason I wanted to check my email was Avery asked me to check my email. And there it is. Avery Ramsdorf sent an Amazon gift card for $8 and says, "Hope you enjoy the Amazon gift card." So again, thank you, Avery, for supporting the channel. Thanks to all of you who support the channel. Now, which mini PC with an Intel CPU would be good for, I'm assuming you mean AAA gaming, triple title. I don't know what AA gaming is. Is there, okay, there's only one that I can think of. But you better be sitting down when I show you the price. Let's go back over to the MinisForum website. Or better yet, turn on the window capture. Let's turn this off for a second. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to turn that off. I want to start Windows Update since it's rebooted. That way we can kill two birds with one stone here and make sure we get all of our updates. I also want to check any advanced options here for, yes, there are 2 optional updates available. Oh, that's weird. I don't have an AOC screen. And then there's our optional preview. Remember, the previews aren't required. I just like to have all the updates. Now, over to, turn that off. Let's turn that off. So over here at MinisForum, under all products, gaming, these are all the MinisForum machines designed for gaming and at different various types of games. So you're going to run the gamut with regards to price and performance depending on the types of games you play. You know, that little EM680 was quite impressive, and it's super, super tiny. And ironically, the one I wanted to recommend to you is not in this list, and it's probably the best machine. Oh, because we're in AMD. I see. Let's filter that. Why does it just say AMD? Where's our Intel solutions? Well, we'll go over here to all products. We'll choose, let's go back to the home page. This is the one here. This is the NUC Xi5 and Xi7. These have an NVIDIA RTX 3070, or in the case of the i5, say it's a 3060, I think. That's the laptop version of the RTX NVIDIA 3070. You can pick this up as a bare bone system, meaning you put your own RAM in it, put your own drive in it. And for $850, it's a good deal. It's a really good deal, because normally to be able to play these games on a desktop, you're likely spending a minimum of $1,200, and especially if you're going to put that 3070 in there, closer to $1,400. Now, I do have a video on this. If we go over to got to use the right keyboard. Go over to YouTube. Hey, this looks like a good video. And let's look at MinisForum NUC i7X there's our review, which I did 7 months ago. And I would recommend you watch it. It's a 4-hour long live stream. And I do the unboxing, and I've got RAM and the solid state drive. I ordered it bare bones. MinisForum actually sent it to me on my request. And I show the inside of it. It's essentially a laptop. It's like they took a laptop motherboard that's got a place for a battery to go. It's got a connector for a screen. And they just took, they left all that disconnected and just put the laptop motherboard in this tall, skinny case. Kind of scrubbing through this, because apparently Camera Girl wasn't here to film this. I guess you weren't here to be my close-up camera, so I have to walk up to the camera. When I reviewed this. Yeah. The Nook i7X. You weren't doing your job.
Was I here?
I don't think you were here.
But kicked me out because you were so sick.
Yep. Sick, all right. Sick in the head. Let's see. Camera 1. And what? But for Intel, I don't think you can do better for a mini PC for gaming than the Nook i7X. And look around at some of the other YouTube reviewers. Rob Tech does a great review of it. I think ETA Prime might have done one as well. And Phil over at the name of his channel. But, you know, they'll actually run some games on it. I don't know if they're games you play and how relevant that the results will be for how you intend to use it, but there's nothing on the market that competes with this. Like, it's in its own category. It's half a laptop. It's essentially what it is. Doug Coles is going to be 77 years old in September, and he loves technology. It keeps his mind active. Absolutely. Oystein says Intel doesn't support AAA games. Well, it is an NVIDIA RTX card on there. Ella Linda says Mitch Morrison's website said he lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah, but we don't know that's where he's at right now. He could be at the bar. He could be out of state on vacation. He could be in Colorado. He could be at a grocery store. He could be visiting a friend somewhere. We don't know where. Someone said, "Where's Mitch?" They didn't ask where he lives. I might be too literal sometimes. All right, let's go back over to full screen for me one more time so I can see the screen better. Oh, that's so much better. And we're going to hit Windows Update again, and we should be about out of updates here. One would hope by now. That's actually not too bad, right? We've seen machines that come in and they still have Windows 21 H2. And 23 H2 will probably be out this fall. Gary wants to know if I'm going to run Prime 95 on this to see how the cooling is. Sure, we can do that. We can also run Crystal Diskmark and see what kind of performance we're getting out of the onboard NVMe drive. So let's switch back over to HDMI input. I've got to go full screen over here on my side. Looks like we're all up to date here. And we'll go over to the flash drive I just plugged in, and we'll copy over, let's see, Crystal Diskmark.
CPU Z in there just for the heck of it. C out here. And Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer. I think that's every. Eject flash drive. Let's start with running the optimizer. Let's get that out of the way. This is an optimizer, not a customizer, but an optimizer that I had built for me for being able to consistently tune my computers that I build and service from Nick over at D7X Tech. And you guys said, hey, are you going to sell that? And, you know, I didn't build it to sell it, but I thought, hey, why not? You know, I already paid for the development of it. And ever since then, you've been able to spend, I think it's $7 over at d7xtech.com to purchase it. Now, what's happening here is quite interesting, where it's not initializing the main screen properly. So that's unusual, but you know, I don't really care. And we might be able to adjust something in the BIOS to change that, but it's really a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Some synchronization isn't happening correctly with the capture card. So with the optimizer run, the next thing I can do is run Crystal Disk Mark and see what kind of performance numbers we get. I'm sure that this would benefit from having like one of those Fangjing 2 terabyte Gen 4 drives that'll hit 7,300 megabytes per second on the reads. I imagine this is probably going to be around 5,000, because usually the manufacturers include sort of a mid-range, more budgety NVMe drive. They don't usually put high-end drives in because it adds to the cost of the machine. So yeah, it's pretty much doing what I would expect it to, and pretty much that's universal across all manufacturers. Obviously, there'll be a few exceptions, but overall, they don't put in the cheapest one. They don't put in the most expensive high performance one. They go right for the middle. And that's usually where your best bang for the buck is, in order to give you enough storage at enough speed at that lower price. That's something you can easily change and upgrade yourself. Stan Aristov with £4.99 says, Carey, have a Gatorade on me. Thank you, Stan. I think I will. What graphics card could you place in there? It's already got a graphics card installed, and it's an MXM graphics card, which is what laptops use. When you see a laptop has a discrete graphics card, like a lot of Alienware and higher end gaming laptops, they're using in many cases an MXM graphics card. And you can Google MXM graphics card to learn more about them. Whether or not we would be able to upgrade this graphics card to a different one, I don't know anything about that, but I also know that it's already got a graphics card in there, so why would I want to change it? What model is the camera? That is a, what do they call it? EXW-Z90. E like Peter, X as in X-ray, W as in Willow, Z, Z, 90. Winston Liu contributed $2 Canadian, said video image incoming to Vancouver, Canada. Worldwide. Luke Greenia said Carey needs to have a camera sale for the retired ones he's not using. I usually end up using them for other, like the really inexpensive tiny handheld cameras I used back in 2010. Those I'm using as, they're cameras I'll sit in the middle of the road and have Subaru Mike drive over them. And if he makes a mistake and it runs it over, so be it. But I wouldn't use an expensive camera for that. I also like to have at least one camera as a backup. So yeah, I'm not willing to part with my cameras yet. Thank you for the contribution, Winston. So 47.95 on the sequential write speed, 35.33 on the sequential write speed. So these are not record-shattering numbers. They're typical and what's to be expected on kind of a grade of equipment that is typically used by system integrators, as I mentioned, to give you the best value. Usually when you want the highest performance, you get the worst value. So obviously you don't want to undermine the power of everything else like the CPU and the GPU by putting in a storage drive that's too slow. For me personally, I think 64 gigs of RAM and a high-speed Gen 4 NVMe drive like the Western Digital SN850X, or if you're more budget-minded, that Fangjing drive would be a worthwhile investment into a machine of this much power. But it's not shoddy, it's not like it's bad the way it is, but it could be better. We could get this number up to over 7,000 on this side. So good 40% increase there. Now, when it comes to Prime 95, let's go ahead and close this out. We've got those numbers now. We'll bring up the hardware monitor here. This is all portable software. Nothing needs installation, so I'm not leaving anything in the registry. I just need the sensors on this. Okay. So let's move this over here. Extend this further down. And we'll start Prime 95 up using all the default settings on Prime 95 26.6. Once again, I don't install anything. I'm only running the portable version. And our clock was about at 30 seconds down here when we started the test. I am seeing we've already hit 88 for some reason. That doesn't sound right. I'm not hearing anything. The system's very, very quiet. These temperatures are a bit concerning. The fans are running. They are running, and they're totally silent, so I'm happy with that. Huh. It's not operating in a way that would have you think it's that warm. So that's surprising. Charlie B says, 74 years young. In honor of your birthday and mine, I have sent 2 small gift cards from Amazon. I've been watching for several years, but I don't comment much. Thank you for the education. Well, happy birthday to Charlie B. I'll check my phone now while I'm waiting on this test to continue. Another gift card from Peter Laycock. Very generous. Peter. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna hold my Amazon gift cards right now until I can figure out in the next week or two whether or not the Sony's a keeper. I think it's a keeper. And if so, then the next step, of course, will be to put the microphones on it and see if the microphones will sound as good or even maybe even better than running it through a second camera. So if all that works out, then that means there's an opportunity for a camera B to replace that Panasonic, which, as you can tell from the image, I don't ever use that Panasonic camera for video. The image is too washed out, and the Panasonic menus are so clunky. It almost feels like it's a children's toy, the way the menus are, like for a 6-year-old, and it's very difficult to find settings. For me, it is. They don't feel as refined. But it's also an older camera, and Panasonic may have gotten better, or maybe they're still the same today. I don't know. Also, I'm also thinking maybe a cinema camera from Canon potentially would be much cheaper and might be better suited for 1080 broadcasting live. But I can buy that used and it won't be that expensive. But thank you so much, Peter. Oh my gosh. And I don't see any other. Who was that from? Charlie B. I don't see a gift card from Charlie B. But, you know, if you're sending Amazon gift cards, make sure you're getting the email address spelled correctly. And then sometimes Amazon can take a little bit before they actually send the gift card, although these have all come through pretty quick. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Nonetheless, it's the thought that counts, and I appreciate you very much, Charlie, and thank you for supporting the channel, my friend. And again, happy birthday to you. What's interesting on these temperatures is what I suspected. Whatever it was that caused those temperatures to go up, I'm going to guess it's never going to go any higher than that. It looks like 89C is where it's going to top out, and it's not going to allow the system to get hotter. Now, I don't know that for certain. We've only been running the test for under 5 minutes, so I'm speculating based on the behavior I've seen that it's self-adjusting to the workload. Fox Voyager says, is it worth it to upgrade the camcorder's firmware? You know, I always upgrade the firmware on my camcorders, and the firmware for camcorders doesn't usually come out very often, but it is something I will check on the Sony. I expect the Sony, being brand new out of the box, to have the latest firmware on it already, but of course I will check it. And I will always make sure I have the latest firmware on all my technology gadgets, not just on computers, but anything I have that can take a firmware update, I'm going to put that firmware update on it. And it will be something I check after the broadcast as I'm getting more familiar with this new camera. So yes, definitely worth it to upgrade to firmware update. Worth it to upgrade the firmware if an update is available. Shamim wants to know if the reason this mini PC is a bit bulkier because of its internal GPU. No, I don't think so. I think that they could have designed this any number of ways. This is a case they've already used on a different model, and this is a way of repurposing that. Instead of retooling the factory and redesigning, it costs less to repurpose a case you're already making anyway. You know, the idea that you can have two 2.5-inch drives in it is the first that I've ever seen on a mini PC. I won't use either of those regardless, but that's a design choice. Without those, this could be a little bit thinner. With regards to the size of the motherboard, the fact that we've got to have added cooling for that discrete graphics card means we need room for those heat sinks. But there is quite a bit of space between the edge of the board, the back of the board, the side panel on the case. And this case is getting warm. Feel the heat coming off back behind the circuit board here. This side of it's very cool. Obviously, this is a side that has the 4 fans, and they're pushing air through this way. So this side of it, there's a wall of heat coming out all about that far. But the fans are dead silent. They're not making any noise at all. There's a little heat coming out of the top, a little bit of heat coming out of the back. Most of the heat's coming out right from pulling the air in on this side and blowing it out that way. Are all the fans working? Yeah, I just checked them. They're all spinning. Now in the BIOS, there's probably settings to have those fans work more aggressively or more loudly. I pretty much like to leave it the way the factory has set it in order to have the best overall customer experience. But yeah, all 4 fans are spinning. And as I mentioned, dead quiet. Not sure if the camera will pick up the fans spinning in there, get the right angle on it. So our current temperature is sitting at 81. It did reach 89C earlier. Test shows it's been running for about 9 minutes. So we're about halfway through this test. Now, normally, I don't really think it's fair to run this test on mini PCs and laptops because they're not really designed for that kind of a workload. Well, it's possible, obviously, to put some kind of a workload like this on this machine. If any PC was ever going to do well, it would be a mini PC of this nature. These workloads are not realistic of any actual work anybody would actually do. This is a simulation of an over and above and beyond example of what maybe 3% of all computer owners, at least on the consumer side, would ever do to the computer, and certainly not for the length of time that we're running the test. So I can't express enough how unrealistic and how really what we're doing here is torturing this poor thing. And when the robots revolt because of the torture we put them through, you'll know why they're so upset. But in the meantime, if that was something you were concerned about, this obviously isn't having any overheating problems. It's maintaining itself quite well. It may be throttling, which is what it's supposed to do in order to keep the system up and running and reliable and running as fast as possible. So while we're waiting here, I could also bring up the task manager information. We'll hit Control-Alt-Delete, over to the task manager, go over to performance. Source monitor. I kind of think that main screen there was probably more beneficial for us right here. And depending on what Prime 95 is asking the CPU to do, you will notice the speed of the CPU will cycle up and down. The more it's going to cycle up, the more power it's going to use, and the hotter it's going to get. So it might run at a slower speed to prevent that. Make sure the system isn't going to crash. And if we scroll down on this side of things, can see how many watts it's pulling. Lots and lots and lots of information here. GPU temperatures here, which makes sense because we're not really utilizing any GPU function of Prime 95. It's just CPU and RAM that we're torturing. Solid state drive temperature there, which again, it's not a drive test, so don't expect there to be much information there. And our maximum frequency was 4.5 gigahertz. And we're maintaining temps in the 80s. And we're about 13 and a half minutes through the 20-minute torture test. And the machine is whisper quiet. I mean, it is completely quiet. As I mentioned, it may be possible to go into the BIOS and turn those fans up to more aggressive cooling, which I likely would make the machine louder and also run cooler. However, my preference is to leave it just the way it is. I like it. And as long as I don't get a blue screen, as long as we don't crash, and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So Trevor says the CPU is throttling. It does appear that the CPU is throttling. And I would expect that to happen on any mini PC. The problem with many mini PCs, though, when you run this unrealistic torture test on them for the period of time that I do, is they can't throttle enough and they'll blue screen. So as long as it's throttling without crashing, then it's perfect. Because you aren't likely going to push the computer this hard for this length of time when you're actually using it to do something instead of pretending to do something, which is what a benchmark is doing. Benchmark is pretending. John Williams wants to know, on my HP laptop, I got a firmware update. Is that the same as a BIOS update? Yes, a BIOS is a type of firmware. I can't get over how quiet it is. There is literally no sound coming out of this at all. If there was ever an excuse for, to hear the fans, you'd think it'd be now. Lynn's Music wants to know, what could power supply go wrong? Literally any of the components that a power supply is made from can fail. And those components can fail due to age, due to the quality of the components, due to overworking the power supply, putting too heavy of a load on it for too long of a period of time. You could have a brownout or a power spike that you're unaware of coming from the wall that's hitting your power supply. You could have cold solder joints. You could have a fan that's not spinning as fast as it really needs to keep things cool. So you could have a heat-related problem. It's really up to the imagination, and in the amount of time that I've spent explaining to you what can cause it to go wrong, you could have just bought a new one and replaced it. They're very inexpensive. What else I'm missing here in the chat? I guess I can make camera one a little bit smaller if you want to see information about the performance screen there. Paul O'Brien contributes €5. He says, just got back on the live stream. I was busy building my new PC and was having issues with cabling. So fixing it over the weekend. Enjoy your build, Paul. Thank you for your super chat and for supporting the channel here. Blackwatch said, one can never have enough Peter Laycock in this world. A very cool dude. for sure. Architect said benchmarking and real world usage are two different things. They're extremely different things. I think the YouTube community and consumers that have no technical background or have no academic technical education put a false sense of accuracy and quality determination based on tests like this that for me is more of a burn-in test to make sure the computer will survive this kind of torture. But this kind of torture is likely never going to happen in the real world. Maybe some of you might be that way, but the vast majority of computer owners are not that way. They wouldn't know how to use a computer to this level. So for me, it's like a quality control thing, right? And there's a little curiosity, just wondering, what if, worst case scenario, we were to slam this computer with a very unlikely workload for a very long period of time? Would it handle it or would it give up the ghost? And it looks like it's handling it just fine. I'm not worried about thermal throttling. What I'm worried about is if the thermal throttling isn't enough. So it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. I would rather see the CPU thermal throttle and keep the process going than for it not to, in order to achieve some benchmark you're looking for, and then cause damage to the components or cause the machine to crash, losing all the work you were supposedly doing when you were emulating with this test. So the important thing is to prioritize the workload at any cost. I don't care if that CPU has to slow down to 100 megahertz. If it crashes during a video render and that video render is taking 6 hours, you have to start over. And if it crashes at 5 hours and 30 minutes, it's like you just wasted 5.5 hours. You have to set the whole thing up again and try again. The fact that this machine is handling this workload as well as it is above and beyond expectations, honestly. You know, there are some people who want to do a truck and tractor pull with a front wheel drive Honda Civic. Not designed for that. It's not going to fare well in that competition. Use the right computer for the right task. A computer like this is a great content creation tool. It's a great gaming machine, obviously with the limitations of the GPU. Intel's drivers for their graphics card keep getting better and better and better. So it's possible its gaming prowess continues to evolve and get better as time goes on and Intel releases updated drivers. Of course, you could always get an external GPU and go through that route. Ideally, you'd want a Thunderbolt interface for that. But if you were going to do that, you're just better off buying a gaming PC if that's what you want. This would be for light gaming. This will handle light gaming super easy. But if gaming is your main thing and that's what you care about most, aside from that NUC i7X, even that's going to fall short of what you can build yourself. But you know, if you have the luxury of time and the luxury of money to both afford a gaming computer of that caliber and have the time to sit around and play those games of that caliber, you don't represent the majority of computer owners. And you know, I try to make my videos appealing for the masses, not for a specific niche of computer user, because people use their computers in lots of different ways. You can use them to control equipment, factory equipment. You can use them for accounting. You can use them for video and photo editing. You can use them for gaming. And then within gaming, there's all these different genres of retro, esports, first-person shooters, flight simulators, et cetera, et cetera. So the variation of what's possible leads me to this conclusion. If you're somebody looking for something specific, build it yourself. you're the average user who wants to be able to accomplish real world tasks using real world software in the real world, all of these benchmarks don't mean anything to you, and nor should they. They're conveying information which people are giving a higher value than the results actually have in reality. As much as I am a power user, there's nothing that I do, including video rendering, that would cause a machine to run at this level of performance for this length of time. And if I'm not doing it, chances are you're not doing it. Now, something that can cause a computer to work very, very hard would be having multiple virtual machines running simultaneously. But in many cases, people who do that are going to want a very capable processor, and they're going to want a ton of RAM. So again, it's not a one size fits all scenario here, and I'm not suggesting that any computer ever really is a one size fits all. There are varying shapes and sizes and capabilities and capacities at varying price points to fit people of varying budgets and of varying usage requirements. And none of you in the chat room will have the same requirements, other than the most common one, which is I just want to turn it on and do my daily routine of checking email, browsing the web, paying my bills, doing some social media stuff, watching, streaming some videos. That's 80+% of computer owners. And then, for whatever reason, the people who represent the minority tend to be the most vocal. And to people who don't know any better, you'd be under the impression that they were the ones that were the minority. But no, we have a very small minority of users who are quite vocal in that vocality. If you don't know any better, it'd make it appear to be a larger group, but it's actually a relatively small group. So one of the reasons I create this channel and I continue to make these videos is to try and bring a grounded sense of practicality to what is, in most cases of a lot of the YouTube tech channels, over the top, ridiculous tech minutia that the vast majority of people not only don't care about, it would make no real difference in the real world over many of the things people evaluate as valuable. But that's not to say they're wrong. It's just to say that they are not the majority they appear to be, and that the fussy nature of that attitude is best resolved by building your own computer, because rarely will anything be pre-built good enough for somebody with that perspective. And if it was, then they're going to say it costs too much. So they're going to find something where it's not good enough for them. And that's fine for them, but that doesn't mean it applies to any of you. Just so you're aware, when you're watching other content from other channels and what they're saying is some amazing thing, in reality may have no difference or impact in the way that you use a computer. So at the end of the day, that's for you to decide. Like I said, this is not a normal thing I would do to a mini PC. It's unusual that I would even consider running Prime 95 on this. And I think that speaks volumes for just how close to a desktop this is getting. And at a fraction of the price of an equivalently equipped desktop. So all things for you to weigh and measure and determine the value for your own personal preferences. So how are we doing on the test? Have we gone over 20 minutes yet? Way over. Yeah, and it's what I suspected. It's got to be throttling at 89. It's been keeping us in the mid 80s throughout the remainder of the entirety of the test, rather. And it's working fantastic. And obviously, when we stop this test, we're going to see those temperatures drop rapidly because we're using air cooling. Watch this. Test. Stop. Watch those temperatures drop. Old Man 55 said the only time I ever saw 100% CPU usage is when converting videos, but it was on an i7-6700 and it did the job. Yeah, exactly. So all in all, I'm trying to think if I can find a flaw or a suggestion for improvement here. I suppose, you know, getting access to the M.2 drive and the memory could be a little easier, but not at the cost of removing those fans. I've never seen a mini PC that had 4 fans in it like that, let alone how quiet they are. I would think you'd hear them. Let's reboot it and go into the BIOS and take a look at what our BIOS on this looks like. See what options we have in there. Let's do this. We'll go to Settings, Windows Update. Where did they move this to? Advanced options, maybe. Recovery. And startup. Troubleshoot. Advanced. UEFI firmware settings. All right, so we just have a text-based BIOS here. Sixteen threads total. It's gonna do here. Oh, this is where you can set your fan curve. Yeah, I would leave all this alone. It's all pretty straightforward. Power limit 1 and power limit 2, I would leave these alone as well. I don't need any changes in this area. It's obviously a Kingston NVMe drive there. That looks to be about all you can change. Not a whole lot in there to manipulate. So once again, there are people that want to make all kinds of weird little changes, a little bit of control they want to have. And for them, the best, in my opinion, the most satisfied they're ever going to be is building their own machine. You know, having something pre-built to their specific preferences, it seems highly unlikely that they would ever be satisfied with anything that they didn't build themselves. Like I said, if someone did build it that way, they would charge a pretty penny for it, and then they'd complain about how expensive it was. So, you know, to each their own. I would be curious how this worked in the real world gaming. So maybe we'll have Camera Girl load some of the games that she plays onto it and have her try it out. Let's see what she thinks about, what is it? Terra, World of Warcraft, Rift, Star Wars, what is it? SW, what is it? Order of the Jedi? The Old Republic. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, pretty limited BIOS here. And you know what? I'm a big fan of a limited BIOS. I don't think users should be getting in here and making changes that could potentially damage the machine or leave the machine unstable. There's got to be a balance between performance and stability. A lot of times when you see people eking out the highest levels of performance, they're paying for that in a lack of stability, and they don't often are fully transparent about that consequence. A lot of times they'll brush it off like it's no big deal. It's blue screened a couple times. In my line of work, when a blue screen happens, it costs the company money. And any amount of work that the employee did that they lost, the company is paying that employee to do the same work again. So we definitely want to have reliability first, performance second. But in the enthusiast community, they often want performance first, and that's all that matters at any cost financially. The amount of money they'll spend on cooling equipment, the amount of money they'll spend on their electric bill, the amount of money that they can dump into these fancy custom liquid coolers, water blocks. Sorry, guys, it's just not the world I live in. People in my world just don't throw money around like that. So don't expect to see that kind of content here. That's all I can tell you. It just doesn't get my bills paid. I don't have the kind of money or the kind of time to take what money I have just to go chasing numbers. Looking strictly for results. What's interesting is I didn't see, hey, will you check the front door for me? I didn't see any option for changing that boot screen. Sometimes in the BIOS, there'll be an option for that power on self-test screen to change it from a big logo to a little logo. And for whatever reason, it's synchronizing with the capture card where it thinks it's in 4K or something. Well, it is a 4K capture. And likely if I put it in 4K mode, we'll see that logo the way it's intended to be seen. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the rest of what's left of Friday. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.